It looks like there's 4 of you already waiting. Good, good. As usual, just please give me an indication that the sound is okay, which it should be. And in a short while, we'll have Tony join us, if I remember how to do the interview screens. So yeah, if you can hear me fine, please just let me know, and then we shall. Oh, actually, see if I can pull up one of the covers. Oh, there we go. Let's see now. While I wait for you, one of you guys to, there we go. I can pull that up. Aha, sound is good. Thank you, Bruno. Right, so the whole stream today is about my latest book, which is called Caveman Theory. If you go to the blog, there's a link to the description here to the blog and to the ebook store. It's only going to be on ebook store because, hello, Tides of Truth. Long time no see. So, okay, I'm going to attempt something now to show you the cover of the book, which will probably screw everything up, but not that. Yeah, like I said, I've screwed it up. It's not. Current application, which is that one. Ah, there we go. I have succeeded. So I wasn't sure which. Oh, he's getting ready to join us. So he's in the green room right now. Hopefully he can hear us. You can give me a thumbs up if you can hear this. Okay, good. So yeah, that's the cover. I wasn't sure, and actually Tony helped me with the cover. He was very useful because he cleaned it up for me and whatever. But the whole point is you've got a guy and a woman standing there, and the shadows sort of show, you know, what's really going on at a deeper level. And I couldn't choose between the orange and the aqua. I quite like the aquamarine, but I guess the orange is more catchy. So I've put the orange on the blog, and the aquamarine is actually the one you get with when you buy the book. Yes, I am a Mac user. And that's because it just works better. All right, now let's see if I can go back to... here we are. I'm getting good at this shit. I can actually switch screens. But anyway, Tony was... hello, everybody. And Tony was a beta reader for it. He actually helped me do some corrections. And I'm going to bring him in because I'm going to add him to the left. There we go.
Good evening,
Tony,
Chief.
can you hear us fine? Oh, my problem. Better?
Yeah, I can hear you fine anyway. The question is if everyone can hear me.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you because I had
my connection is smooth as well.
Yeah, I had the mic plugged in, so hopefully everybody can still hear us. Please tell us if the sound sucks, because I will try and smooth that out if I remember how to do it. I can hear you same as myself, so hopefully it's good.
Good, we'll see then. I can't see the chat. In fact,
don't worry, I'll keep the chat out. So for the
moment, I can anyway. Yeah, echoes. Okay, cool.
It's just
my only concern is that I've got Albanian internet at the moment, so it might just be a bit slow at times, but otherwise I think we're good.
Okay, well, you're in Albania, I'm in rural Italy, so... Hello, Ilya.
broadcasting.
Well, this is it's probably going to crash and burn, which is kind of like how relationships go for a lot of people these days. So it's in June. Anyway, the link to where you can get the book, and there's also a blog post about it, are in the description of this live stream. I am drinking a little Lambrusco, which is a very light, fizzy red wine. String echo feedback in Tony's audio. Okay.
I've just changed the setting. Let's roll with that for a minute. I have got my headphones in though, so it shouldn't really be a problem.
It might be me not having the headphones that is the problem. So
that has happened before, hasn't it? Yeah. Oh yeah, because then the sound is coming through you and then coming back in.
Yeah. Let me just do that. Apologies.
Please let me know my audio quality is changed as well, please guys.
Let's just see. Okay. Is this better? Okay.
That sounds fine for me. So let's see what everyone says.
Sounds good to me too. So Sam there is the resident audio guy, so hopefully he can tell us how badly we're screwing up. Okay. Anyway, until you guys let us know what's going on, I'll just give a very brief introduction. Better. All right. So this book has been a long time coming. I would say much better now, and then a no. So, well, I hope that was a now without a W. Okay. Hacken got 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up's good enough for me, man.
Yeah, we'll roll with that.
Okay, so the point of this book, it's probably going to land me in jail, banned, or whatever. I don't know. That's why it's only on the e-store of my e-store, my blog. So go to the blog, and that leads you to the e-store, or just go direct to the e-store, because it's basically it's written in such a way that it will piss absolutely everybody off. And I think Tony will attest to that to some extent. It's going to piss off all the feminists. It's going to piss off all the guys who think they're like know everything about women. It's going to piss off all the pickup artists, all the so-called red-pilled guys. It's going to definitely piss off the men go their own way incels. I can't think of anybody that it won't piss off, basically.
Well, I'm luckily basically a robotic autistic Delta who's embraced the Delta grind set, so it pretty much washed over me.
Okay, I'm being told my microphone is a bit high. Sound levels. How do I do that? Okay, there. Okay, I've reduced mine a bit. Hopefully that's a bit better. Bruno, let us know. So yeah, Tides of Truth says it must be on the right track. You know, that's the usual story. If you're getting flack, then you're probably over the target. But the thing is, it's been a very long time in coming, because I would say from about 2006, at least. Yeah, I'd say 2006, definitely. Like guys I used to train with, like friends, random strangers that like kind of met me, or people in my building that I didn't even know their name. They've been pushing for me to write something about, women and like how you get women and whatever, because the pickup artist craze I think started to come about in about that time, 2006, 2007, 8, something like that. I don't know. Maybe even before that, 2004. But and I didn't know anything about the pickup stuff. Like the book The Game, which sort of launched the whole thing, was given to me by one of the guys I used to train with, because it was like...
was that Roosh?
No. The Game was written by... I forget what his name is. He's the guy that hung around with Eric von whatever, the guy who calls himself Mystery. The tall guy that like does magic tricks.
Okay.
Some little dude with like curly hair, I think a Jewish guy, like like shaved his head and became his like little acolyte. Um, I forgot what his name is. Anyway, he
Got like
wrote
a cool
this.
picture of him, bald
Yeah,
with glasses or something, wasn't he?
yeah, he wrote this book called The Game, which was like all the rage. And the thing is, after training, we used to like go to the nearby pub to have a drink and just talk shit. And quite over that period, quite often, like either a girl would come pick me up, or she would like wait for me outside the gym, or she would drop me off at the gym or whatever. And so these guys got to saw random hot women like pick me up or see me or whatever every sometimes it was like two or three different girls in the same week. And so they started like noticing this and asking me about it, and I was like, whatever, just doing my thing. And one of the guys trained said, "Oh no, you should read this book. You should write this book. This is like what you do." And he gave me this book, The Game, and I was like, "What?" And I read it, and I was like, "No, these guys are fucking idiots. They're not. They don't have any. I'm not one of these guys." And but yeah, so because of that, like most guys just want to get laid, I guess, and I suppose I managed to do that quite well. So they wanted to get that skill or whatever, and they wanted me to write a book about it, and I was like, what the fuck, I'm not doing that, because first of all, I didn't agree with the whole pickup artist thing. I mean, people who read my blog and just do a search for PUA, they will see like I slated these guys from day one. Now that's not to say that absolutely everything they say is bullshit. There are some nuggets here and there and whatever, but the problem with pickup artistry is that it gives an overall zeitgeist, a worldview that is erroneous about women and about men and women and about relationships. And it's sort of part of the whole mechanization of society, which I disagree entirely with.
I was going to say, almost turns for them like it turns dating into a kind of video game,
Yeah,
right?
that's a
In which
very yeah.
in which the only point is the sex. It's
That's
literally the
actually a
score.
very, very good description. And look, some of these guys, Neil Strauss, thank you, Douglas. That's the guy who wrote the book, The Game. The that's actually a very, very good description, because, and look, some of these guys are like complete insults. This Neil Strauss guy, if you see like a picture of him before he wrote the book and a picture of him after he wrote the book, major improvement. He shaved off all his like random shitty looking hair. He like dressed better, like didn't. I think he went from like an omega to like a decent looking normal guy. But the thing is, what they do is they mechanize, I suppose, the interaction between men and women, or between a guy who's just naturally good at talking to women, and they like make like a spreadsheet out of it, and they're like, oh, okay, when you first see a girl, you have to like do this, and then you have to do that, and it's just like you said, like a video game. And the whole point is that is not how people relate to each other. And if people do relate to each other in that way, well, guess what then? 3 years down the line, after you got married, you're going to end up in a divorce court where she takes you for half the house and the kids, because that's the game. It's like, so what the fuck are you whining about? You're like, you bullshit. I think it was Sharon Stone a long time ago. Most of the people on this chat are probably too young to know who Sharon Stone is, but she was the woman in Basic Instinct, the film. There was like the rage because she uncrossed her legs and you could kind of see what was there. Like a whole bunch of people in the 80s are like freeze framing, like VCRs. But anyway, so Sharon Stone, I think it was her that said like, well, yes, it's true, like women can lie or cheat, and women lie about all sorts of things, but and they fake orgasms. Yeah, that was the thing. She says, yes, women do fake orgasms, but men can fake a whole relationship. And it's kind of like, it's sort of accurate, right? Because that's what kind of happens. If you're one of these nerds that just like, okay, I did all the checkbook marks to get her to bed, and then like I do all the checkbook marks to like get this hot woman to like think I'm cool, and then she'll marry me, and then I'll win because now I've got the hotkey on my arm, and a few years down the line she realizes you're just a fucking gamma with like a spreadsheet, and well, she divorces you because you're actually an idiot and a loser, and well, why shouldn't she rape you for, like, the house and the kids and the money and the alimony? Again, if you're relating to other human beings as a robot, well, guess what? When the other person relates to you as a robot and sells you to the what do you call those guys in Star Wars? The little dudes, that steal robots. the, the guys who go, Houdini.
What are those again? It's like a Jabberwock or something, isn't it?
No, it's not, whatever. But
Yeah.
the guys that rob. Yeah, one of the guys in the chat will know. Yeah. Well, so what? You get done for scrap parts. That's the game. And so that's one thing. That's why I don't like the pickup artists. And then there's another thing, which is like this whole process of pickup artistry roboticizes men and women, because the objectification is both ways. So I don't like that stuff. The whole red pill movement is like, okay, again, there's Jawas, thank you. If you're a robot, you're going to get sold off to the Jawas for spare parts. Why not? And the whole point is like, the red pill movement is like, again, there's nuggets of truth there, like the fact that men are like in the shit in terms of like, courts and family courts and so on. Yeah, okay, there's truth in that too. But if your whole attitude is like, oh, we men are poor men, we're getting done by everything, and oh, we're getting, divorce raped in the courts, and we're getting divorce raped by the system, and the system is against us, and oh, we're poor. Yes, okay, so the system's against. So what? Fucking get some balls and just find your way around it. You work your way over it. That's the whole point of being a man, right? Deal with problems. So again, it creates a zeitgeist of victimized sort of like, oh, women are all whores and women are all like bad, and and again, it's an imbalance. Just like feminism is a complete imbalance and destructive. So, and then there's the men go their own way, because these guys are such incels that most of the men go their own way are people that like nobody wants to like have sex with, so they like, I don't want to have sex with anybody. Kind of like the feminists, same sort of thing. It's like, well, I don't want to, I'm going to refuse to have sex with men. Yeah, well, you're 300 pounds, you got pink hair, and like you smell. Like, it's not really a challenge to like not have sex with you. So it's the same, it's the male version of that, and it's like, it's unhealthy. All of this stuff is unhealthy. So the whole point of this book was to like put down some very practical, real, reality-based stuff about men and women and how they relate to each other. And of course, we're both proper Catholics, so I wanted to also make it clear that, look, this whole book is not like some Bible thumpers version of like, oh, and you must read this chapter of the Bible and that's how it's going to be. That's not the point. I'm coming at this from a very secular perspective, because most people that that are living today are coming at it from a secular perspective. If you're already a Sedevacantist Catholic, you're already kind of way ahead of the game anyway. So that's not that's not who it's aimed at. It's aimed at the guys who are struggling, who are like not happy in their relationship or not able to get in a relationship. And it's not just for guys; it's for women too, because as you've read the book, and I'm going to ask you some questions and like what you think and so on, because like one thing that's very important to mention is that Tony was very instrumental, very helpful to me, because we've joked about this, we've discussed this for like probably over a year now, but very often I have the problem of not knowing what it is that I'm not telling people, because I've done a video long ago, I think it's video number 4 or something on the channel, where I discussed like the IQ gap, and like if you got Asperger's and you're high IQ, like how sometimes you can't relate to other people. And it's not in my mind, well, not in my mind, as far as I'm concerned, when I even when I write a blog post, sometimes I like put everything in there. I describe like the female social sexual hierarchy, which is in the book, by the way. And it's like people will ask me all sorts of questions. Oh, this is not really hard. I'm like, what the hell, dude? I told you what it is. And like what Tony has been very helpful in is telling me what doesn't make sense to him, or where he thinks the gaps are, or what he says, well, I don't know how you get from this point to that point. So that was very helpful, because hopefully it helped me cover the ground that like most people wouldn't see otherwise. And there's a couple of things in that, like Vox's male sociological hierarchy is in there. I reference it, and I just like took the little descriptors of each type, and then I reference it sort of throughout the book in various forms.
I'd like to mention one other thing briefly, just on that point tangentially.
Yeah.
I understand what you mean with the IQ communication gap, and I think I can help bridge that, obviously, because I'm somewhere in between, like around, between 120, 130 type thing. But I don't think that's the entirety of the problem. I think the other thing that would make the communication gap difficult for you is the kind of worldview and life experience that you kind of have naturally been able to find that is lacking from a lot of people's lives, especially the kind of audience you're speaking to, right? The only example that comes to mind, for just as one example, is that you and I both know you had a good model of masculinity as role models when you were growing up, right? From everything you've described about your father, he was a pretty masculine dude. Whatever imperfections you may have had.
I don't know about. I mean, it's like yes. My father is different.
Put it this way. Put it this way. Compared to what most male role models will be for the vast majority of men in the Western world now.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Yes. So my father is definitely a masculine guy, but he's also a complete Sigma. So there's it kind of like deviates sometimes from the normality at all. But yeah, he is. Yeah, I'd say that's a fair comment. And
I think you've just, in a general sense, experienced much more naturally just how these natural things should work and how they should play out, and how human beings should normally react as well. Maybe your experience of traveling play a role in that too. But basically, a lot of this stuff that many people take for granted, doesn't exist for a lot of people now.
You're actually right. And that's you're probably right. That's actually a bigger gap, because the other point that I've become very aware over the years, and I became aware of this very quickly as soon as I got to Europe, was that because I grew up in Africa, I grew up in a very wild sort of environment. I mean, we literally lived on a farm for a while where there was no running water that was potable. You couldn't drink the tap water because it was very salty, and there was no electricity. We had lanterns, and my brother and I used to get our pellet guns and bugger off in the morning, and we were like homeschooled by my mom, so it was like I learned like basic maths and writing and stuff at home, which, funny enough, almost 20 years later, like in engineering, when I was studying civil engineering, one of the professors said, oh, well, none of you guys can do like long division by hand. And I burst out laughing, because I was like, fuck, we're all like second or third year engineering students here. It's like, of course we could do it. And he looked at me and was like, why are you laughing? And I'm like, come on, dude, we're like engineers, we're like almost engineers. Like, surely we all. He goes, no. I'll show you something. Those of you that can do division long division, big numbers by hand, put your hand up. And it was me and one other guy. I was like, what the fuck? Are these people retarded? And that's because I was homeschooled, so it was like for a couple of years. So yeah, and again, my brother and I would have our pellet guns, we'd bugger off, and we'd come back when we come back. There was no cell phones, mobile phone. You could die out there and they wouldn't know where to look for the body, really, because it was like a gigantic farm on like in African, there was everything out there, like snakes, fucking warthogs, like buck, leopards, there was literally everything. So yes, in that respect, you're probably right that's probably the biggest gap. So it's been helpful, your input, to like tell me, why do you go from here to there? But I also wanted to give a sense, because what I haven't done, which I probably should do, is like a little list of the topics that I sort of cover, or the like concepts that I cover. And there is the male and the female social sexual hierarchy, and there's like a hierarchy of needs for men and for women, and how those two blend and mix together. And there's also there is a generic sort of list of big picture concepts that are nonsense. Like whether all the I hesitate to mention them one by one because, well, you know why, we're on YouTube, but
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
the usual narrative of clown world are nonsense, and so I just list those out. But there's stuff that's not talked about. Like for example, there's a dehumanizing factor towards women. There is a dehumanizing factor against women. And I just before we came on, actually, somebody sent me a little clip. Well, one of the Telegram channels got this little clip of this guy going to ask random women, like American girls, probably in their early 20s, like, do women need men? That's the question he asked. And like, obviously he's picked and the answer is no, 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 we don't know because we're strong, independent women, whatever. And he spliced this with like little clips of like guys on oil wells, like putting the drilling oil well and attaching it, like climbing off buildings and like hanging on by dear life to like fix a pipe and stuff like that. And the point is that both men and women have been lied to such an extent that they have no idea of like what the relationship between each other should be. So that was primarily what I wanted to do, was write this to like correct that, and then also sort of show you like how to get there, sort of thing. And the reason I resisted writing this book for like 20 years is because, again, when people used to ask me to write this, like they basically wanted to know how to get women into bed, and it was like, look, dude, that's not even, yeah, I can do that, but that wasn't really my aim. And like my perception of it when people ask, is like, if I were to write this book, I would have felt like a fraud, because it was like, I'm not where I want to be. Yeah, sure, I can have a different girl every couple of days or whatever. I can bang a whole bunch of different pretty women, but and I did have relationship that lasted a while, and then they ended, and I was like, but I couldn't really find the right sort of thing. I mean, I'm twice divorced, and my third marriage and whatever. But it's only now, that I've married properly and that I've got 3 kids, 3 kids already with her, and we're happy, and it's like sort of settled. Oh, rural internet. That I feel like, okay, now I can probably say something. And another point I wanted to mention was that I remember, I think it was Vox on one of his blog posts that said something like, don't ask a divorced man like how to, anything about marriage or whatever. Don't ask a like guy whose car breaks down anything about mechanics. And there's some validity to that, obviously. But on the other hand, statistically speaking, there's going to be some guy who gets married like early, like Vox did, stays with his wife happily for the next 30 years, and he's like, oh yeah, marriage is easy. He's just the statistical anomaly that's like got lucky or whatever. Just like, in the Somme, when like all those guys went over the trenches and charging machine gun, there's probably one guy who didn't get a scratch on him. Got to the other side, killed his Germans. Like, yeah, cool. But just because that's how maths works, out of the 100,000 people that got machine gunned to death, probably 5 made it out without a scratch. But that's not a plan.
I would love the conversation in the pub after that, wouldn't you? Yeah, all the guys sat down with all their legs blown off, and there's one guy with his beard like, "Oh, it's fucking easy. What are you talking about?"
Yeah. Just charge the machine gun nest. They shoot the other guys. They don't shoot you. You just gotta like pull yourself up by the bootstraps. That's sort of so. Let's put it this way: if I knew that I was going to be in a war, like trench warfare, like the First World War, I wouldn't want to take my advice from the guy who like charged the machine gun nest, and out of 100,000 guys, like came out unscathed. He's not the guy that I want to really spend a lot of time with. I want to spend a lot of time with the captain that charged 17 machine gun nests, got wounded 43 times, but lived to tell the tale and won all the time. That's the guy I want to know. Like, what did you do? So, and this is that kind of a book. So it's like, we just got a comment here from Douglas who says, the guys who made it out obviously aren't married to Irish girls. That's very, that's there you go. So yeah, so yeah, it's not. I'm absolutely not the guy. If you want to know like what a good church going boy will do from day one, that's not what this book is, and that's not who I am. So like all my other nonfiction books, it's sort of a contrarian type of book, and I'm gonna let you maybe tell people a little bit about it, or if you've got any questions. I know we've done a lot of questions on it back and forth, but I don't know, what part maybe impressed you the most, or what part you thought maybe needed a bit more work or whatever.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, if you've got any more specific questions, let me know. I'm also not sure
Oh
there's some
yeah,
kind of
actually,
delay with the audio, so if that does become a problem,
yeah, it does seem
go
that
on.
there is a delay. But one thing I did want to ask you is like, I've put the female social sexual hierarchy on the blog as well. And that's in the book as well. And I know that initially you seem to think like, oh, you didn't quite get it or something like that. And I wanted to ask if that's better understood now, and if the book helped you maybe like understand how that's used.
Yes, is the short answer.
Good.
Obviously, it's quite early on in the book, and
Yeah.
but from what I remember, it was clearer in the book. I think it helped that I'd seen it on the blog first, but it was clearer in the book than it was on the blog because you basically just go into more detail in the book, don't you? You expand the concept further. I think there's a sense in which I still don't get it, but that's because I haven't applied the model enough, and
Mm.
because by your very explanation, it's so I don't. It's not ephemeral, but it shifts so much that it's hard to see it as a consistent thing.
Yeah. The
As in, as you say, it changes so much from context to context. So it is just by its nature harder to grasp. But yeah, no, I got it more this time than I did when I saw the first kind of draft.
well, the other thing is that it's a real tool. It's a real skill. So you really need to start to apply it in the world. You need to like operate with it. You need to use it, and then you'll start to see like, oh, that how things
Mm.
click. Because to a certain extent, it's like if you read a book that described really cleverly, really really well how to block a punch, but like you've never blocked a punch in your life. And then if you use that stuff in the book and you're like, okay, you train with your friend first and like, okay, just punch me, then you realize, oh, this really works. And this is the same. So my advice would
Mm.
be take that description of the female social sexual hierarchy and start to observe, like just in general. You don't have to like, oh, this is the girl I'm going out with, I'm going to apply it. Just when you go out with friends, or when you see a group of women talking, or a mixed group of people, men and women talking to each other, just see if you can apply the principles of it to it, because that's how this book is structured. That's one thing I didn't explain in the book, but it's structured in a way that it's kind of almost like modules, and it's like, okay, you learn this module, you learn that module, you learn that module, and then as they coalesce, as you start to use them together, it gives you a much better overall perspective of men, women, the interaction between them, the things to not do, the things to do, and so on. So hopefully that's it. And by the way, if
The other
guys in the
the
chat
other
have got
thing,
questions,
yeah,
just
go
like
on.
if guys in the chats have
Right.
questions, go ahead and fire them out. Yeah.
The other thing I will emphasize for anyone listening is that it's not a list of rules in the same way you'd expect from any of the other PUA books or anything.
Mm.
It's not a to-do list. This book is certainly
No.
not a to-do list. What I gather from it mostly is, as you say, it does give practicable advice, but it's more about practicable advice based on consistent principles, right? Your
Yeah.
advice is basically this is the principle of the reality and try to live accordingly, basically. Or you can apply that sometimes to just make better decisions. But you don't you leave out a lot of the details there necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Because if you were to micromanage this kind of stuff, you would already fall back into the trap of the mechanization and shit like that, right? So
Well, not just that, but again,
Yeah, it's not a to-do
it's
list, but it is practical principles.
well, again, it's kind of like engineering, right? And again, I refer. It's actually coincidentally the same professor that I was talking about a little while ago. He used to give exams where he would give you an example of like figuring out bending moments for a random column or a bridge or whatever. And like the students used to freak out. They'd be like, "Oh, there was nothing. There was no papers where this was done in previous papers." And he's like, "Guys, you're supposed to be engineers. I've taught you how to figure out bending moments. And you've got certain principles that you need to use for a column, certain principles you need to use for a bridge. Fucking use them. That's what you're supposed to do." And I was the only guy that really liked it because I was like, "Yeah, cool. This guy's stuff is applicable." Everybody else was complaining because in the previous papers they knew they had like a bridge and then they had a wall and then they had and it was like, what the fuck? So they only studied how to do that. They didn't understand the whole point, which is precisely, it's correct what you said. This is like principle based stuff. And there's no way that I could possibly imagine all the different scenarios that could play out. The thing is, if you understand the principle, you can apply the principle in like an infinite number of setups. If you don't understand the principle, it's all Greek to you. While if I try to describe, an endless series of examples, you'd get lost in the examples and you'd forget about the principle. Like, again, it's sort of like driving a car. If you understand like how the tires interact with the road, it doesn't really matter if you're driving an automatic or a manual. Kind of once you understand the principle of controlling a car on the road, whether it's raining, snowing,
Yeah, you
the
also
type.
don't have to see every single road. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's definitely done like that. Willie Ram says, if you're a visual thinker, it can help to conceptualize fish as a web. Each woman sees herself in the center while I think by fish he means female sexual hierarchy. Each woman sees herself in the center while simultaneously acknowledging when other women are for now in the current center. Yeah, well, that's covered in the book. There was a woman that wrote into Vox that made, and I linked to that thing where she described the female social thing as a wheel with a hub and like spokes, sort of. So there's like women are all in the wheel, and like the woman that's in charge of the situation in the particular moment, she's the hub, and all the other women around it are like the spokes of the wheel. But again, she admits that can change because. And another very interesting point, which I put the attractiveness of a woman is part of the female social sexual hierarchy, and as a woman, she understood that that's the case as well, which men don't, most men like complain or didn't understand what the female social sexual hierarchy that I put up together was like. Oh, but how well, does beauty doesn't mean your rank. You're not an alpha if you're. It's like, oh, because they're trying to relate it to the male thing that like Vox has done, and this is a completely different mechanism. So
Yeah, and one thing you did do, which was useful in the book, is you tried to consistently contrast the two. So you show that the male hierarchy and the female hierarchy back to back, and therefore you
yeah,
can see them more in contrast, which I think is just easier to make things clearer for people. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Times of Truth says, I look forward to reading. Is there any prescriptive stuff in the book to start to implement while trying to understand and live the concept? No, not really. I mean, it's written for everybody. The whole point is like it's kind of like the Sistema book I wrote. You could be a total novice, and you pick it up and you start to understand the concepts and apply the concepts in your everyday life. That's the whole point of pretty much everything I write. That's nonfiction. Should be accessible to, okay, you need to know how to read and have an IQ that's probably a little bit larger than your shoe size or something, but I don't think it's particularly difficult or there's no, you don't need to whatever be a sigma or so whatever to like understand the book. It's written for everybody. The gammas are going to be very upset in the book because I pretty much give them no quarter, but they are the antithesis of what, generally speaking, I not just me, but women too, believe a man should be, and not just believe, but objectively what a man should be for a good continuation of human life and society. Gammas are basically the antithesis of that. So they're going to be upset because I point that out, but it is what it is.
Well, the very first challenge for any camera is just to accept that. You know,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Accept it. If not, you're still just being a pathetic, whiny little bitch and a waste of human air. So,
Yeah.
yeah, accept it first and try and move forward after that. We still want you to be part of the team. Just fucking get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You know, Vox has talked about the male social sexuality quite a lot. Um, but you know, there are little points of divergence. For example, I suppose as a strategist, he thinks a bigger picture. And I remember we had a conversation on the phone once with even the Scriver guy, the comic book guy, who like sort of backstabbed him in a number of ways and whatever. And then he was like, "Yeah, no, I'll go into business with him." I was like, "What? I mean, you backstabbed me once." My attitude is like, "You better fucking kill me," because not only is there probably something coming back at you, but I'm never going to have anything to do with you again. And he was like, "Oh, why? You know, the guy's kind of good in his own thing, and I'm just not going to give him any position of power." And it's all very well in theory, but in reality, I want nothing to do with gammas. I never did. I mean, long before I came across, Vox's social sexual hierarchy, I didn't have a specific name for them because for me, you know, in my own way of thinking of things, I only had three. Long before I knew Vox, I mean, this is like over a decade before I met Vox. So I had this idea of like, you know, there's only three types of men. There's like alphas, betas, which included all the other little sub-denominations that he talks about, and the scouts, which are like kind of the sigma. And there's, I explain why in the book, and that's kind of where the concept of caveman theory comes from, because caveman theory is based on the model of evolutionary biology, which it doesn't matter if you believe in evolution or biology for that matter. It's a name to give it. You know, it's a model, and I always say if a model works and it gives you repeatable, effective, constructive, predictive behavior, then use it until you find a better model. So that's all it is. I don't, you know, evolution as the so-called idea that they try and teach you in school about Darwin, that, you know, we came from monkeys and all that. It doesn't work mathematically, and I figured that out long ago again. But the maths just, there's not enough time on the universe
I
for us
think,
to.
you know, to put it into a nutshell, your approach to the evolutionary biology in the book is it's just humans have been around for a while. Whether it's 6,000 years or 6 million years doesn't really make a difference. And they've exist when they first came to be. They existed pre-civilization,
Yeah.
so it was before we had fucking bubble wrap on everything and everything was safe and happy duty. It was just we exist biologically because of the natural world that we were placed in. It seems pretty sound. And we are how we are because of that, basically.
Well, yeah. Basically,
Um,
that's
and you
essentially
can kind
that's
of
it.
just take things from there.
Oh, and I do think it matters, by the way, about
Hmm.
6,000 years. No, we're
But I
definitely
will
longer
emphasize
than that.
now.
And dinosaurs are a thing, and the Earth
Okay,
is not
fair enough.
flat. Let's just be
Um,
clear, okay?
one conversation at a time. All right. But yeah, just to emphasize to everyone then, like your major point in a nutshell, right? Your thesis is that firstly you have to understand what men and women are, um, given their natural proclivities.
Yeah,
And men are that way, or the way they are, because their survival pressure, what has allowed them to carry on existing in reality, has been their ability to interact with objective reality.
yeah,
Yeah. Or,
exactly right.
to not
Yes,
get killed by it.
yes,
Um, that's premise one. And premise two is women's survival pressure has been other women, like you say. Or
yes,
basically their ability to get the right man to keep them shielded from objective reality.
yes.
And that's it. That's caveman theory in a nutshell.
Pretty
And then
much,
after
yeah.
that, it's like how do those two sexes interact as a result of that? Yeah,
And not
cool.
just that, but like
No, I
all
think one of
the
the biggest things to point out. Go on.
no, sorry, it's not just, you
Sorry,
know,
it's the delay. It's a bit
that
of a
is the
fidgeting.
yeah, I know it's the delay. That is the point of it, but the subtleties that come out from that are deep, wide, and not necessarily obvious to most people, especially given the layers of narrative that we've been imbibed with.
No, no, but when you suggest the model, some things click straight into place. I mean, I'd
Yeah,
say there were a few nuggets in the book that were really lucid in my reading. And probably the first one, just based on that model, was the fact that when you point out the survival pressure for women is not objective reality directly,
yeah,
you realize, oh, so that's why they get to be solipsistic. Oh, and
yeah,
that's why they don't need to be logical. That's why they don't need
exactly.
to be logical. You know, some of them can be if they really try, bless them, but you know,
Yes,
it's not like it was written into them in the same way it had to be written for men.
yeah,
We had to
because
do that.
you
You
know
know, they kind of got a pass in that respect. Yeah, the other
the,
things to deal with.
the classic example I always use for men, it's like, you know, if Ugg back in cave days was like, well, I've got a nice pelt, but it doesn't match my boots, and I'm going to go out there with the snow like a meter on the ground. Well, he's fucking dead. You know, his DNA doesn't get to reproduce, and that kind of epigenetics does not continue. You know, and then there's, instead of Ugg, there's Yug, and Yug goes like, Mammoth, me got spear. I can do it on my own. I don't need to work with you gammas. Out he goes and he gets stumped. That's it. He doesn't reproduce. So that's why men objectively had to learn about the weather doesn't give a shit what I think. The weather's the weather. I better give a shit about the weather. The weather doesn't care about me. And the fact that I need to work with this gamma who I hate, but you know, he actually is pretty decent at like making spear shafts, and we
Yeah,
need
yeah, yeah.
spear shafts.
So the man says the weather is the weather, right? If it's cold, it's cold. Then the woman sits back in the hut and she says to her, Ugg, Ugg, I'm cold. And Ugg says, I now make magic fire for you. And she goes, ah, when I feel things and I tell people, the weather changes.
That's a very good. Yeah, that's exactly right. But I mean, I've been in relationships, and like what my first ex-wife, where the woman would literally get upset with me because she had bought a new dress that she wanted to wear, and it rained that day, and I literally came to the point where I was just like watching this. She was like, "Yeah, and you know, and it's like it's raining now," and she was starting to get pissed off at me, like going, and I was like, initially I was like, "What are you doing? You know, it's the weather." It's like, "What the fuck have I got to do?" No, because you don't understand. And I just let her rant on for a bit, and then I said, "You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. And the reason that you're right is because I am your god. I literally changed the weather. It's, yep." And it was like, it really pissed her off, but she couldn't really argue the point. So it was like, no, I'm not suggesting that that's the best way to handle that sort of conversation, but it's how I do it. So yeah,
I'll tell you one thing though. I mean, after you pointed this out, and I know you and Vox have both kind of spoken about this a lot recently, but once you point out that women operate primarily from solipsism, dude, once you point that out and you see it, you cannot unsee it now.
no, yeah.
Um, it's just so patent after you point it out. Yeah,
I'll tell you,
but it's helpful, right? It does help to explain an awful lot. Yeah.
I'll tell you how I really. I mean, I kind of figured it out quite a long while ago, but a moment that drove it home. I've never told anybody this. I think I was seeing this girl who's she's actually a very cool woman. We she's Mexican, in London, living in London, and it was a really cool, very, you know, it wasn't a very long relationship. We didn't stay together very long, like a few months, I think. But the point is, she entered into this completely clear-minded, and it was like, to use her words on it, it's like, yeah, we're just gonna do a piece of road together, you know, kind of like friends. Well, you've got a bicycle, I've got a bicycle chain. Together, we can like do something more meaningful. And it was really great because of that. It wasn't like there was no expectations from either side. It was just like we were, and funnily enough, you know, despite the fact it was only a few months, she was very instrumental in my understanding certain pretty deep concepts about Christianity, funnily enough. And I was helpful to her in understanding some aspects of sexuality which she hadn't quite mastered. And the fact is, shortly after we broke up, she started seeing this other guy, and have been together since. So something that she hadn't been able to do, she wasn't able to like be in a proper like long-term relationship. And she's definitely, the time that we were together helped her like get over that. But there was a moment when with her when I really realized a woman sometimes just there's like some biological thing that prevents her from seeing reality as it is. And we never really had an argument. It was never an argument because it was such a open, honest relationship. There was nobody was like trying to like get anything over anybody. And I can't remember what the conversation was about, but it was like some stupid thing. And I was like, well, but you realize that you did this and then you got here, and then at this point you like completely jumped to something else, and you said that you realize there's a gap here, and like that's what I'm talking about that you're kind of trying to ignore. And like I said, it wasn't even an argument. It was literally just like, no, but I'd like you to pay attention to this, because finally, I'm able to talk to a woman that isn't getting fucking schizoed out when I point out some autistic thing. And um, and she really, I saw that she really gave it her best shot. She really tried. She was like, no, but I get up to here, no, no, and I could just almost hear her brain like, tick, and she just skip. And I was like, no, but slow down. I was like, we really weren't arguing. I was like, just slow down your emotions and just, can you try and follow what I'm saying? And you get to this point, and it was just bing. And there I realized, there is no evil intent here. There's no intent to try and deceive me. There is no bad, like, and also because the issue, whatever it was, it was so insignificant, it didn't matter either way. It wasn't about the thing. So there was no benefit to her lying about it, or not looking at it or whatever. And that's when I really realized, I was like, oh, like, this is just literally beyond her physical, biological ability to do. And she's a very intelligent woman, very successful. I mean, she came from nothing. She was literally thrown out of the house when she was 8 years old in Mexico. So you can imagine what kind of life she had. She was taken in by her professor at school when she was like a teenager, because and his wife, it wasn't like one of these sick situations. It was like him and his wife realized, no, this girl, she's smart. Anyway, she, with no money, she went to from Mexico. She ended up going to one of the biggest, most renowned colleges in France, in fucking Paris, of all places. And they sponsored her to go there, and she was like, she said, when they told me that, I cried. I was like, no, I can't accept this. And they were like, you're gonna fucking accept it because we believe in you, sort of. No, so she was a very intelligent woman. She wasn't, and very open in. I would say she was definitely above the standard level of any solipsistic woman. So that made me realize, look, there is actually a biological sort of thing here. And then I started to look into that, and I've because of the hypnosis and stuff, I have delved and read like tomes and tomes of books that most people wouldn't do for their PhD. Like from physics for astronomy, and like how the human brain, neurology and stuff like that. I've literally read like books on neurology that are like that like are for PhDs or whatever. And a lot of it is, a lot of the stuff in there is sort of guesswork, by the way, and they say that themselves. So I figured out that, like, no, there's actually a biological reason for this, and that's why, again, caveman theory, because the biological reasons for that come from the necessity of having to survive certain things instead of other things. And like you said,
Yeah,
the survival pressure for women is social. It's other women. It's their ability to
yeah.
get the man that will protect them. It's all social. It's all interaction with other humans. And guess what?
So
Humans are illogical. So, you know,
true. So what I've noticed since reading it, and I know it's not just since then, because you and I have had conversations related to these topics.
yeah.
over previous months anyway. But since recognizing the female level of solipsism, one of my first interactions was a bit of irritation, especially because of my hyperlogical nature and stuff like that
Oh,
too.
you're
But
not the only. Let me
my
just.
reaction now, after I've just
Yeah, sorry. I just want to
yeah,
interrupt a second. That sense of irritation when you're dealing with female solipsism. I just want to clarify that affects not just you, but only 100% of every male person on the planet. That's just a little tidbit of statistics
yeah,
there.
okay, but that's why I wanted to give a caveat to that because ever since I've noticed it, it's been irritating. And when I speak to women, sometimes it's like, oh, there's a solipsism again. But what's happened now since I've recognized it and accepted it, and I'm still talking to women quite a lot on a regular basis in many different contexts and settings
Yeah.
and stuff. Um, I've noticed there's actually I differentiate two shades of it. It's like, okay, because what is a solipsism? It's like
Yes.
we're swimming in this sea of objectivity, and
Yes.
they're all in these nice little safe bubbles of solipsism. And the
Yeah.
only reason why those bubbles can exist is because the men who are in the objective sea actually keep the fucking whole thing afloat.
Yes.
Now, for that reason, it's almost like they're more innocent in there's an innocence in the solipsism quite a lot. It's like
There
we
is.
can't even pop the bubbles, we're just
Yeah.
in them. For that reason, it's extra. What would you say? Beautiful or pleasant when a
Yes.
woman is humble, and
Yes.
extra annoying when she's
Yeah.
proud.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's extra irritating when she's proud. For that reason, and I've kind of got to that point now in my taste buds.
Also, I don't know if you've come across, this might take a while because, like I said, it's a process, right? And as you start to use the stuff, it becomes more and more obvious. But one thing that I've found is that a certain type of solipsism, which is the natural part of it, which has all its biological reasons for existing, which is to do with like looking after children and being safe, and it's related to that. There is certain level of solipsism, a certain type of solipsism, which I actually find quite endearing. It's actually quite. It is kind of beautiful. It's kind of funny, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It just makes me
Well, like
smile.
I say, it's got an almost soft innocence to it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's almost like a little
oh, there's
kid.
that big crazy ocean. Yeah, it's like, oh, there's that big crazy ocean you guys are worried about, but here's me and my bubble. And I like my bubble. Do you want to come see
Yeah,
my bubble? You're
yeah.
like, oh, okay, no, that is quite a nice, cute little bubble. Good for
It,
you, stuff like
it's like a little kid at the beach that goes like, "Oh, I've got a shovel, so it's my shovel is the only one in the world, and he's like 3, and it's sort of like,
that.
it's
Yeah.
cute, it's kind of like cool. It's not a bad thing, and that's part of like
Yeah, so
what I meant about the dehumanization of women, because yes, women are solipsistic, but the point is that these red pill guys, pickup artists, they've basically latched onto that as like, oh, women are selfish, evil bitches, and it's like, you
yeah, but
fucking.
most men are selfish, evil dickheads, right?
Well, exactly.
Just in a
Most.
different way. Yeah.
You know what my saying is, like, it's only 98% of people that I really can't stand, and then there's another 1% that's really evil and I really hate, and the other 0.5% of the 1% that's left are completely retarded as well. So, that's how I feel about the human race. So yeah, we're only talking to those few people that we could get on with. all you guys
Charity's
in
a
the
virtue
chat,
for
yeah.
a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
charity's a
is.
virtue for a reason, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
working
know
on
you mean.
that. I've got another 50 years, I hope. Wooly Ram makes a decent point. He says the solipsism also informs us as to why modern men are so effeminate. We're shielded from objective reality, and that's absolutely true, because now even modern men are shielded from objective reality. I mean, like, was it? Whoever, I forget, like most guys can't, whatever, Owen Benjamin can't change a car tire, It's like, what? And I've seen that with, like, this was already a long time ago. I can't remember when it was probably the year 2000 or something, like over 20 years ago, in Italy, in rural Italy, and was like New Year's Eve at my uncle's place that he had. And there's a bunch of us, like maybe 15, 20 of us with my cousins and whatever. And it started to snow on New Year's Eve, and a lot, like, it was like a foot of snow within like 15, 20 minutes. and it was a rural house that he'd like fixed up, and there was another rural house like a few hundred, maybe 100 meters away. And he's like, we get a knock at the door, and we're like, huh? There's like 3 or 4 guys, all mid to late 20s, like between 23 and maybe 28, 29. They were like, oh, sorry guys, but can somebody help us? We need to put the chains on the tires, because the snow, otherwise we won't get out of here, because it was like dirt road to get out of there. And we don't know how to do it. Like, can somebody help us put the chains on the tires? And it's like, my uncle, who was my age now, probably was in his mid-50s. Like, oh yeah, okay. And he went out, fucking snow pissing down, and it's not turning to sleet. And I went out with him because I'm like, well, fuck, I'm not going to let my uncle go out in the fucking snow to help these idiots and not go and help him. Now, I grew up in Africa, like I said. I've seen snow, I've gone skiing or whatever, but it's not like I'm used to figuring out how to put on the chains on a car tire. Never seen them before, never used them, never had to. I go out there, I say, all right, well, what's this thing look like? And I put it down and I think, oh, okay, well, this goes there and this goes there. And I clipped it on and I did one tire. And I'm like, well, fuck, if I can figure it out and I'm a goddamn bushman from the Kalahari, why can't these retards do it? And I thought, no, let's go back inside. I told my uncle, come, let's go. And he goes, no. But he was in his, I don't know, Zen Buddhism phase or whatever. It was like, I'm not doing it for them, Giuseppe, doing it for me. And I'm like, okay, uncle, but I'm not going to catch pneumonia because of these fucking idiots. And I literally looked them in the face and I looked at them and I said, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're all like 6'2", in your 20s, same as me. I've never seen one of these fucking things in my life and I just put one on. But you're making my uncle do this shit out here in the winter because you're such pussies. And they were like, oh, we're sorry. But they still stood there and they let him do it. I want to bitch slap them. So yes, it's an absolute fact. It's a reality. And I went back in and like my cousins or I don't know, some girls that were there like, oh, but Giuseppe, aren't you going to? And I said, no, listen, let me be clear. I'm not coming back in because I'm letting my uncle be out there in the sleet for no reason. I checked with him. He wants to be out there in the sleet because it's good for his karma or whatever the fuck. That's his semi-Hinduistic belief systems. I am a nicer man than my uncle. And they're like, what do you mean? But he's out there fixing it in the snow for them. No, and that's the problem. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. I, being a nicer man, have decided that it's better for them to either die of hypothermia or learn how the fuck to put chains on tires. They'll figure it out, And if they do, they'll have learned it for life. And if they don't, the planet's better off for that DNA to never reproduce. And they're all like, oh, you're so brutal. But again, even back then, caveman theory applied. So...
And again, that's why some of your biggest advice is basically for men to be masculine men and for women to be feminine women, right? In many ways, half of the problems you mentioned in the book would be solved just by those two things.
Absolutely, and it's like, it's so hilarious to me that like, with all the women that I've known, biblically, I have not come across one example, okay, of a beautiful, pretty woman that's a staunch feminist. Not one. I wonder why that is. Could it possibly be that they know very well that their looks are enough to open all sorts of doors for them if they just go like, oh, help me. I don't know how to change this tire. Now, for that being 4 pretty 20-year-old women going, I don't know how to. I would have been out there with my uncle, in the snow catching pneumonia because, well, they're girls. They're not supposed to know how to change a tire, Yeah. And that's how it should be. It's very, in one sense, it's very simple, very basic. In another sense, the whole reason that it's a whole book of 75,000 plus words is because it's not so obvious. Unfortunately, everybody, guys especially, have been brainwashed, but women too. Because, just like I said, all those young women that the guys going around asking, do we need men? Do you need men? And they're all saying no. I'm like, you know what? I'd like to grab all of them and parachute them in the Kalahari, where I went hunting and grew up as a kid. Just leave them there for like, just a day. Just 12 hours would be enough. Leave them there for 24.
It's like when you see that video, right, of the team of women who were put on the survival island
Oh
by the team of men.
yeah.
That's probably one of the best things I've ever seen on the internet.
Yeah, that is hilarious. They'll start crying and it's like, oh, they can't do shit. They're starving. It's like, we need the guy. We need the
Yeah.
boys to like, and the guys still go there and sort of like, you see that what I don't like about that is that the women denigrate the guys throughout, and then still go and ask them to help them do like basic shit, and some of the guys do, and I'm like, if I'd been in the guys team, I would have like those guys that go and help. I said, no, 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 come over here. I'm gonna drown you out there in the shallow end of the ocean, because you need to learn that it's because of people like you that society is going down the tubes. Because, and that's what I say in the book as well, like I mentioned in the book, like, that old saying, don't stick your dick in crazy. Well, I've totally failed at that, but don't stick your dick in a feminist, because crazy, sometimes their split personalities are really exciting. So I can kind of understand that. But with a feminist, there is no benefit to it for a man or for a woman, because, and again, I've been saying this thing that I'm going to say now. I've been saying this since I was about 16. Men over the last couple of 100 years, maybe 100 years, have essentially evolved past the brutish me club you, me have sex when I want, and me kill other weaker men. We don't live in that world anymore. And even when the waiter brings me my coffee cold, I'm not allowed to take out my katana and take his head off right there, because it's been disrespectful. It's kind of frowned upon, apparently. So, we control ourselves despite our testosterone emotions. And that's fine. But now women have to catch up. So if I am able to not draw my 6-gun and shoot at the waiter who brought me the coffee cold, because I'm controlling myself, I've got testosterone flowing through my veins, but I'm like, no, I let him live. Well, guess what? Women have to start controlling their shit even if they're on their period. Okay? And again, there's always going to be a disparity. I'm never going to say that the ability of a man to control his emotions is or should be equal to the ability of a woman to do so, because it isn't. And the hormones that go through their system, we can barely imagine what the hell they go through. It's, like I say it as a joke, but it's not really a joke. Every morning I get up, look in the mirror, and I thank God I was born male, because it's hell to be in a female brain. It's like you have all these wild emotions happening throughout your day, and then like once a month you go completely fucking insane, and then if you have a kid you go completely insane, and then after you had a kid you go completely insane. It's like, it's a fucking wonder they can get up and put their shoes on by themselves, honestly. So, and I'm not saying that in a denigrating fashion at all. I'm saying, we should understand. We can't understand that, but we should appreciate that. We should make allowance for that, which is again why I'm not a proponent of like, equal before the law. I've never agreed with that. It's one of those retarded things, like same Americanism, like, free speech. I was like 12 when I first, or 13 when I first heard this idea of free speech from some American guy that came to visit our house, and I was like, again at 12, I looked at him like, are you fucking retarded? There's no such thing. What are you talking about? And it's the same thing, this whole thing about equality between men and women before the law. It isn't, and it shouldn't be, because we're not equal. And the degree of responsibility that a man should be able to deal with, I think, is higher than that of a woman. And if that's the case, it would be unfair to judge a woman by the same standards that you judge men. Just like it would be unfair to judge a child. We don't judge children by the same standards that we judge adults. And I would go further. I would say that, if there were such a thing that would be reliable, which it wouldn't be, but if there was such a thing as reliable IQ tests, I don't think that the law should apply equal to the guy with 150 IQ as it does to a guy who's got like an 85 IQ. By the same token, I don't think the guy with the 85 IQ should be allowed to do certain things that the guy with 150 IQ can do. Like, for example, I don't want my airplane pilot to have a 75 IQ. I sure as shit don't. I really don't. And I probably also don't want a guy with 150 IQ be my airplane pilot, because he might get bored. I want a guy with like 120 IQ to be my airplane pilot. That's ideal. But that goes into all sorts of socially unacceptable concepts, like, well, it becomes, I suppose, very kind of fascistic or something. I don't know what the word is. So but overall, yeah, it's. Wooly Ram just said, if you can't handle the heat, stay out of the short stack mulatto Mediterranean women. Well, I'll just say no comment to that. Because I have some vast experience in that whole realm of the world. But it's choose your own poison. I mean, if you're with a really hot Russian, yeah, she probably won't give you the kind of dramatic, plate breaking, random stabbing in the kitchen, shouty argument that you might have with perhaps a mulatto or Mediterranean or an Italian or what, Spaniard or whatever. But she'll probably poison you, or you will die in your sleep because her boyfriend blows up the house or something, that you
I was
didn't
going to
know
say,
about.
yeah, you'll actually get kidnapped and like thrown in a bag in a river. And when it comes to the court, it turns out it was actually her fucking brothers that did it.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if guys in the chat do have comments or questions, so go for it. If you do, let me just quickly catch up quickly. I think it's just mostly people saying hello and listening, but much better. Okay, this is all about the sound. Yeah, Taj of Truth says, yeah, why would you want to be a freaking robot? Yeah, that was what we were talking about before. Okay, now I think we are caught up with the chat. But yes, so basically it's not your everyday sort of relationship type book. And I did think, like, if there's enough interest and whatever, since we do have a subscription only channel here now, which I don't ever push in any way, shape, or form, so most people probably don't know about it, and I don't know what you need to do to become a subscription member. But we have enough, I don't know, say like 20 guys or whatever that are interested in that, and that either have read the book or have anyway a subscription, and they want to do like a little Q&A. We could probably do that like maybe once a month or something, and have like a live stream where people can throw out their individual life issues or relationship issues. You're now part of the Kurgan Agony Uncle channel.
That's adorable.
I know. Don't worry, most of the advice would be like, man up, die, fight, go have a war.
John. Yeah, John, you've got all these problems. First question, John. Were you a little bitch this week? You were. Yeah. Well, you know your problem then, John, don't you? Try again.
Yeah. No, it'll hopefully be a bit more useful than that, but yeah. Willie Ram says, Russian women are interesting. If their man is up to snuff, they're loyal as a wolf. On the other hand, yeah, it's I'll always remember that. It's like I had a few Russian girlfriends, and one of them was really funny. Like, I can't remember what it was. She was talking about some other guy. I can't remember the conversation we had, but it was about her talking about some man who was either with one of her friends or an ex-boyfriend. I can't remember. And she was like, yes, and it was a disgusting guy. Of course, if he was doing that with me, I would do this and that. And she basically explained how she would like shark him, like take him for all his money, like disrespect him and like bang his best friend or something, And we were having lunch actually, or dinner in a restaurant. And I was just listening to this, quite fascinated by the whole thing. And then I kind of looked at it and I go like, that's quite interesting that you're telling me all this, because none of that shit would work. I didn't finish the sentence. I was going to say, none of that shit would work with me. It's like, Giuseppe, you are a proper man. I would never dare to do any of these things with you. This is just for a weak man. And I was like, oh. So when you say, of course, and this is how you describe, of course, if man is weak, of course you must do that. How what do you call that thing you clean your feet on top of when you go inside a house? Before you go inside, you clean your feet on something. Of course, if man is weak, this is what he will become with me. It's like basically a doormat. She didn't know the word for it. It's like, so
Describe it.
it was hilarious, but it was absolutely true. And I remember another time that was a fucking funny evening anyway. There was another part, the previous part of the story that was funny as well. But anyway, I walked out of this place that I managed to get into because of a bunch of women that were there. I was like, you had to be like in a proper fucking suit or something, and I was like straight from training, sweaty with like, you know, training pants on, like a Sistema t-shirt and like sneakers or something. But they got me in because like there was about 8 girls. They're like, no, he's our friend, let him in. And he's like, the bouncer was like, but he's not allowed. And he's like, no, let him in. And so they got in. Anyway, when we got out and I was still with these women, there's a hot woman up front walking off with some guy, and she thought that the women I was with were like going to the place where we just come out of. And she turned around, she goes, girls, that, and Russian accent full of, girls, that's a nice place. There is a lot of lawyers and bankers in there. Go there, it's a nice, good place. And she was on the arm of some guy. She just walked out of the place. So it's like, I just burst out laughing. Now, most guys would think like, again, you know, the red pill part of the, oh, she's a gold digging whore. And I'm like, look, the best way to describe it is like this. You as a man, right? If you're a man listening to this broadcast right now, this cat, like, would you like? It's like the Mexican joke, Pedro. Do you like the fat, stinking woman with only one eye, one leg? Would you be with a woman that's, you know, ugly, smells, stupid, and only has one eye and one leg? Would you? No? Well, why not? You bigot. By the same token, you know, you're saying, oh, well, she shouldn't want to be with me because I'm successful and I have a bunch of money. And she should be with you. Why? Because what? You're homeless, stupid, not ambitious, and you smoke dope every day? That should be what attracts her. Everybody's with somebody because of a whole bunch of reasons, you know? And like, when I was dating online, I used to have a profile that said, yeah, look, if I'm not attracted, I'm not attracted, and I really don't care how sparkly your personality is if you look like Mother Teresa, especially if you look like Mother Teresa now, because she's been dead like a decade, you know, by that time already. It's like, I really don't give a shit what your character's like. If you look like dog, then you're dog, you know. So that by the same token, if a woman wants, you know, is attracted to you because you are successful, you are wealthy, you can give her a nice house. So what? Just make sure you don't go bankrupt, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know, evens out. I don't see that as an issue.
Well, I think the elephant in the room with that, just from what you were saying, is that if any man is in touch with his soul, which is another topic I think we should at least cover before we
Yeah.
finish tonight,
Yeah.
they all instinctively know that if that's all the relationship is, it's shallow ultimately, right? And this is
Yes.
where you're not Bible thumping at all by any stretch of the imagination in the book,
No.
but that is ultimately the logical outcome, right? Right? You know, even if you do just want the sex because you want a trophy wife on your arm who looks good, you know, she's not the Hobbit mongrel or whatever, and you want to show off to your friends, fine. But where does that go? And in the same token, if we see women who are only looking for the man who's rich because he can buy her a nice, you know, shiny car and a holiday to Spain, I think the
Yeah.
men go, oh, but that's shallow as well. Now they might do that hypocritically, you know, because
Yeah.
you're pointing out, well, you're just as fucking shallow as she is.
Yeah.
But the problem is not that you're as shallow as she is. The point is you're both fucking shallow, right? That's the
Exactly.
point.
Yeah, because and there is a
Whereas
section
we
in the
both therefore instinctively know that there's morals and standards that go beyond that you're just not living up to yet. So fucking get your shit together, right?
well, there's a whole section in the book, right, which is like I think I called it choose your setting, player one. So it's like, what do you want out of her? Is it just sex? Is it like, you know, semi-relationship? Is it like, oh, a secularly cool relationship? And eventually, you know, if you want to have kids, okay, so you want to have kids. So what? Are you going to get married to a woman who wants to have kids because you have the big paycheck? Because that's not going to work out long term. And once you go through it logically, you end up at the whole, like, well, you should get married for life and that's it, which is the whole Catholic thing, right? And again, I'm not pushing, I don't think that anybody can accuse me of pushing the Bible or Catholicism or any of that. I just rationally put out all the objective points and like, oh, well, if you understand this concept, then that leads to this. Oh, great. And then if you understand this concept, that leads to that. And if you understand this concept, that leads to that. And the final sort of, boss game is like, get married, have a bunch of kids, and stay together until you drop dead. Not because the church says so, but because that's what you really want to do. That's who you really are, essentially. We've got some more comments here. So Tides of Truth says, sure, I'm interested not just for myself, but for my son. Sounds like a great idea to have a regular Q&A. I've heard a lot of angst among Gen Z guys about the current relations between men and women. Yeah, the book was primarily really written for young guys because I get a lot of emails and a lot of people asking me this question. And I thought, it's about time that I put something together that helps them. But it's not just for guys that are in their 20s. I tell you, there's guys in their 40s that are reading this right now, that are writing to me and telling me, which is fair enough because, even if you're a Gen Z guy like me in your 50s, it took me a long time to get rid of all the nonsense that had been pushed on us. And we were the first generation that sort of cracked the whole, Truman bubble, like they put you in this bubble where they just feed you bullshit. And Gen X is the ones that like put a crack in that, the boomer whole idea of like free love and all the other nonsense. So nobody was telling us any of this stuff was bullshit. We had to like figure it out, and it takes a while, it takes a long time. So hopefully this will reduce the amount of time for the people that are young, and for the people who are a bit older and are still in it, they're like, oh, be like sort of a light bulb moment. Hopefully that's the whole point.
If I could just add a tangent there, just because of it's analogous. I'm doing something analogous at the moment with philosophy and apologetics. So I've just started running a weekly seminar group where
Yeah.
I run through like basic philosophy, basic apologetics for everything from normal objective philosophy to Catholicism. And this is not necessarily to advertise that, but just to point out that when we do run those groups, there's a lot of questions that I think, because my background obviously is with that kind of stuff. There's a lot of questions that people ask that I thought most people knew the answers to.
Yeah.
But it turns out, no, not necessarily in a lot of cases. So, but that's why, again, young men have come into those groups and they've already found them to be very helpful because questions that they've never asked before, they've never even considered, but maybe everyone else has had experience with, they can ask in those settings, and it's a great way for them to practice and share notes and
Yeah.
learn all together. So,
Well,
yeah, Q&A is a great idea.
Yeah, the reason I came up with it actually is because of training. Because at the end of every Systema class, what you do is you sit around in a circle and then you go through the circle and you ask everybody what you learned today. And the first time, this was never done in karate because Japanese, you do what you're told. And okay, so this was like a very different experience, and it was like it's amazing how much you can learn by doing that because some guy will come up with a concept that you didn't even have any idea about, and it's like, oh, and it sets off a light bulb moment for you, and then you do it for them as well. It's a very useful process actually. Woolly Ram says, that reminds me, the Japanese have a concept translated as peace sickness, implying too long a period of comfort makes men sick. It's true, physically as well, not just psychologically. It's absolutely true. Tides of Truth says, why does it seem so often like women try to gaslight men, in the sense that they often tell you that your own perception of reality are not correct? Infuriating. Well, it's because a woman, okay, this is going to sound, again, I'm going to be accused of all sorts of things, misogynism, female hatred and whatever. It's not that. Women don't actually see reality because, again, remember, process of survival for men was reality. Process of survival for women was subjective social interaction, mostly with other women, but with men as well. So if you keep that in mind, when you're saying like, it's raining outside. We have to wear an umbrella. I need to put my coat on because otherwise I will catch pneumonia. And your wife says, no, no, you look good in your tux, and I know, just go to the shop for me, just go get me the milk, and it doesn't matter if you're in a tux, just go run and you'll be fine. You're like, no, I don't want to fucking die of pneumonia. Hold on, and and you start an argument of that. And she's saying, oh, you're just being so weak or whatever. It's because her perception of reality is different from yours. And women, when they argue, are not arguing like a man. It's not like 2 plus 2 is 4, therefore, 4 plus 4 will be 8. That's how men argue. A man will go 2 plus 2 is 4, and she's like, and 4 is a spiky number, and spiky numbers, I hate spikes. And then it's like, what the fuck does that have to do with the color purple, And it's because she's running her movie in her head, and remember, she's solipsistic, so it's not her fault, clearly, obviously. The universe is built for her, duh. And so if something is not right in it, well, it's God, if she's alone. Or wait, there's another man in the room. Guess whose fault it will be? Well, clearly it's your fault, So, and that's the film that's running in her head. And the more you try and no, but look, you realize that, you stepped in dog shit, you tracked it through the house, and now you're blaming me for the smell. I'm like, what the fuck? Well, yeah, it's because you didn't warn me. I'm like, but it's your dog. It's your house. It's your carpet. I came in here after you'd already tracked it in. What the fuck? And I just pointed it out. It's because their perception of reality is, let's say she did track dog shit in. It's her house, her dog, and you came in half an hour afterwards and you're like, hey, there's dog shit on the floor, and it's not your fault. She's not pissed off with you. And you're like, what the fuck? Why? Well, because you pointed it out. You made the universe suddenly be unfriendly. So, that's not logical, but that is emotionally, that's how she's processing that. I'm exaggerating now, but it's an example to try and explain.
One of the things that your some of your observations made maybe click in my mind as well is the fact that relativism in philosophy is basically the feminization of philosophy. And that's when I've seen that in any actual so-called arguments I get in with women about anything objective like philosophy or religion. One of the immediate complaints is, oh, why do you have to be so closed-minded? Like, can't everyone's ideas be true? And obviously it gets really old really quickly when I'm going to say, no, only some ideas are true and most of them are wrong, and your ones that you've just told me are also wrong. And they go, oh, but can't you just feel a different way? And it's like, no, I can't. Sorry. It's pretty much the end of the discussion by that point. But you know what I mean? But the modern zeitgeist has given them kind of carte blanche to feel like, well, everyone is accepted now that that's how philosophy works. We all have these feelings, and all truth changes depending on different people. And whether you're fucking Nova Sordo or Muslims or Hindus, they're all the same. We all just feel different. Whatever God feels like to you, it's all true. Blah 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 blah. So it goes a step beyond that. The idea that they can gaslight you. They've kind of been given that ticket by the modern intellectual zeitgeist as well as their own solipsism, right?
And that's not just women; that's fucking men as well. And just a point of note: if you go to my original "The Face on Mars," which is still there because the update hasn't changed that was written when I was 26, so that's nearly 30 years ago now. At the back of that book, when it talks about the author, it's in there that I believe philosophy should be lived. Philosophy is a real thing. Philosophy back in the day was, a discussion between men about objective reality and figuring out how objective reality actually works. That's what philosophy is, between friends. And there's concepts of philosophy where you would die over them. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Socrates fucking drank the stuff rather than change his mind about bullshit. He drank the poison, right? But it's true. I mean, it's the whole, Picard. Just say there are 5 lights, and he's like, no, there are 4 lights, and that's how a man is, and that's how a man should be. But that's gone by long ago already, and you're absolutely right. And that's when I say don't stick your dick in a feminist, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Although I'm a little bit concerned that you initiate conversations of philosophy with women, and I'm just thinking, what kind of fetishistic masochism or have you like delved
No,
into?
let's not say I initiate them. Basically, it goes something like this. It goes something like this. I'm spiritual. What do you believe? Well, I believe in God. I'm a traditional hardcore Catholic, and I believe that's the only truth. Oh, well, and then she just starts asking like 1,000 questions, and every
Yeah.
time she realizes that I've only got one answer to them.
Oh well,
So
here's a
that's
here's a
basically
little
what
fix
happens.
for you.
But I'm a very patient.
Yes, you are, and you're British, so you're very polite. I had this kind of situation on a plane once. I've been on planes. I don't know how many millions of kilometers I've traveled because I've been on planes since I was a little kid. I wish I knew because it's millions of miles, I'm sure. But anyway, and in all that time, I've been sat next to a pretty woman that I didn't bring on the plane with myself. I think twice, like 2 or 3 times, like total. And one of these times, I was on the way to Kazakhstan or somewhere, I can't remember. Anyway, there was a woman sitting next to me, she was quite attractive and whatever, but I was really minding my own business, not doing anything. And I started to read the Bible. Now, this was early days when I just started to investigate the stuff, so it wasn't, it was a King James version or whatever. And I started reading that, and she was like, "Oh, you're reading the Bible?" I'm like, "Yep." Okay. So
Your
what?
mic is scratching, by the way.
Oh, right. She said, "Oh, you're reading the Bible?" I said, "Yeah." And left it at that, carried on reading the Bible. She goes, "Oh, that's a very complicated book." Like, not really. It's the Bible. It's just a book like any other book. It's got words in it, and you read them. Oh, no. It's very complex. And I think, well, I don't think so. It's pretty straightforward. Some metaphors and stuff, but Well, I did my major in theologic. What I forget what it was. It was some study that some major in like the theory of religions or some shit. One of those fucking nose picking majors that have absolutely no meaning other than to try and destroy religion. And they're like, oh, well, that's nice. And I carried on reading, and she was starting to go. I could feel it. She was starting to go slightly insane because I was just like not really like catching on it. And she was like, but it is very complicated. And I was like, no, it really isn't. It's really pretty straightforward, and there are some metaphorical things and there are some historical things, and it's mixed in together because that's how Hebrew works. But and she was like, oh, you know about that? We're like, well, yes, because I can read, and there's this thing called the internet. It's been out there a long time, and yeah, but I don't really read the Old Testament that much because of that very reason. I tend to read the New Testament because, simpler and more accessible. But, and just the fact that I wasn't engaging with her nonsense, she wanted me to and I was like, I simply, all I did was state my position, didn't give her an inch in terms of what she was trying to do, and that's it. And it I am sure that woman still remembers that bay. If you ask her about it, she'll know about it. And in a way, that's kind of how you have to do it a little bit, because I've had that same experience here, but I'm a little bit older than you are, just a few years, and so when I've had that, it's the same thing with some woman saying to me, "Oh, but how can you be this? And does that mean you're a misogynist, like a homophobic?" And I'm like, no. Do you want to actually know? That's how I start out. Do you want to know what I actually believe? I like it. I said, well, then, if I'm going to talk about it, let me finish. Yeah, don't interrupt me, because I'm going to talk about one topic at a time. We deal with one topic at a time. That's the only way I do this stuff. So, and they invariably say yes, and they invariably will interrupt you about 15 times when they said they won't. But and you bring and you say, did we not say? Every time they do, you just did we not say? And then I go through it with them, logically. It's like, okay, this is this point. Bap, 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 bap. Can you disagree with this aspect of it? No, but no, we're not talking about that yet. We're just talking about this point of it. Can you agree or disagree that I'm correct on this point? Well, yeah, okay, good. Then this leads to that. And by the end of it, they're like, oh, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from. I still don't agree with it. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to. Okay, now let's change topic. And it, you know, it plants that seed and it grows. There's some questions here. Bruno says, if finding a woman at church isn't working, lack of material, any ideas on where to find one? Context, early 30s, 9 out of 10 in looks. I don't know if that means you're in your early 30s and you're 9 out of 10 in looks, or if you want to get one that's 9 out of 10 in looks. And he says that since converting, I've been avoiding non-Catholic women, but I'm getting frustrated. I also want them not to be vaxxed, obviously. Okay, well, we can't talk about that too much, but... and thoughts on age gap, how much is too much? Thanks. Okay, so a couple of things. I agree with you on certain medical procedures that you probably want to avoid, and that's fair enough. I would say that's the primary point you want to focus on. You're not going to find, I'm not going to say you won't, likelihood is you're not going to find some city, a Catholic girl, like just waiting for her white knight. Chances are you need to like get with a secular girl that's got, let's say she's not selling it on a street corner for crack.
What country do you live in, Bruno? I'll let him answer that. Continue, yeah. But he should answer that.
Yeah, he should. So as long as she's not selling her butt on the street corner for crack, you kind of probably have something to work with, because the modern women of the day, it's a process, and you got to sort of lead her to it. And the guys that I've advised, who have like taken the advice that's in the book as well, they're married and having children now, mid-20s and whatever. And the women that they started out with were not like Catholic when they started out with. They're all baptized, confirmed, and married under sede vacantis sort of things now. Very happy, cool couples. I've met them. Not all of them. Some of them are in the United States, but they're married, babies on the way, and so on. So it's a process of gently leading her there, and not by like, oh, you have to be Catholic otherwise. You be yourself, you be Catholic, and then you just, she'll naturally sort of ask about stuff, and like, oh, what's this? And you'll get, no, I'm doing this because this. And it's like, are you interested? And I'll let you know. I'm hoping there's a book that's a brilliant catechism of, it's in Italian though, which is written by Carlo Dragoni. It's Pope Pius X's catechism. I don't know, I don't think it's available in English, but the Italian one is absolutely brilliant.
But Bruno's just said he lives in North Italy. So the two thoughts that come to mind there are speak to a priest. Because if I remember correctly, sometimes the IMBC, who are the main SETI priests in North Italy, might do pilgrimages. Pilgrimages are a good way to meet large numbers of Catholics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they might also do some type of meetup groups for young people. So what you want to do really is get into the priest network, speak to the priests,
and also Bruno, like if
they can tell you about events and whatever, and visit different churches.
Yeah, and Bruno, if you're in northern Italy or whatever, ping me an email. Maybe you're not too far from me. We could like have a coffee or something. I can like maybe give you better advice face to face or whatever. But don't get hung up on them having necessarily, and if you're in Italy, they're nominally, most women are nominally semi-Catholic to some degree, so that's already a bonus. And thoughts on age gap, how much is too much? I remember like when I was in Canada training with Vladimir, like I was seeing this girl who I think it was like 10, she was exactly 10 years younger than I am, a very pretty girl. And he was like, oh, he mentioned it. He's like, oh, she's really hot. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's not working out. It's not going to work. What do you mean? It's like, yeah, it's not going to last. When we go back, we're going to break up, I can tell. And he's like, oh, and, like concerned. He was like, so what you do then after you break up with her? I'm like, get another one. And he was like, oh, you really like Italian men, eh? Like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm not going to become a monk. But his point was like, oh, but she's 10 years younger. That's why, because 7 years is the maximum amount. Well, that's a lot of horse shit, because my current wife is like 13 years younger than I am. We're fine. I don't know what the age gap thing is. I think if you're a man, to be older than the woman is normal. Um, if she's older than you, like especially if she's like a decade or something older than you, I think that's unusual. Um, I didn't know. Actually, one of my old bosses was a really cool dude. He was married to a woman that was like I think a couple of years older than him, and she'd already had kids with somebody else before him, and then they had their own as well. Um, but that was unusual. He was a very, but that guy was like, although he's English, he was a proper hardcore, very masculine dude. He was a short little dude, but he was like a fucking Rottweiler. Like, and she was a very feminine woman as well. So that worked, I think, because of that. So yeah, and I think Bruno said he's in his early 30s. So if you're in your early 30s, you're in your prime, dude. So um, you should have the, and if you look good as well, I would say Italian women are a little bit particular. So perhaps you speak English quite fluently, clearly, perhaps also indulge in looking a little bit further afield. I don't know. But Times of Truth says, is it possible for a relationship to work out when the woman is more conventionally successful? Since women are more academically successful now, this is an issue. No, it's not an issue. Again, and this is not about me and this is in my time when I was, nowhere near even remotely being Christian of any kind, never mind Catholic. So it's not about saying what a cool dude I am or whatever, but I was with women that were married to multimillionaires that would like cheat on their husbands, like, and do all sorts of schemes just to like get to be with me for like a couple of hours. And I'm not proud of that, and I'm not saying that was a good thing to do or anything like that. The point is, and I wasn't wealthy at the time. I wasn't rich. I didn't have fuck all really. I was just some guy that trained obsessively, pretty much. Um, why? Because of my internal state, which I discussed this in the book. I think Tony can attest to the fact that I discussed this in quite some depth, what the difference is between that or the other. Now, if a woman makes more money than you, works more hours than you, and then comes home and also does the cooking and looking after the kid and whatever, that's probably not going to work out. Unless you're in that kind of dynamic of where, I don't know, you cook the meals and you get pegged in the evening when she wants to. I don't know how that works. There are these relationships where there's a inverted, where the woman is kind of the breadwinner and the man is a stay-at-home husband that looks after the kids. There are people that do that. I have zero knowledge of what that's like. I don't know. I have been in situations where, for whatever reason, I wasn't. I've had very good money and I've had no money. So I've been in all those kind of ups and downs and whatever. And I've been in situations where, the woman I was with was working and earning and I wasn't necessarily. But that never even came up. It was never like an issue. I've never, um, I've generally always paid for everything almost all the time. So that, but when I wasn't in that situation, that didn't come up. Also because it wasn't going to be a permanent situation. It wasn't something that was just going to stay that way. I mean, I don't give a shit if I've got say my wife was a nuclear physicist with a PhD and she earned like 10 times what I could make. It wouldn't matter. I would organize myself to ensure that whatever I did, if I couldn't provide it financially, provided things in another way, and if I really can't see the situation where I'd be a stay-at-home husband, but let's say I was. Okay, let me try and answer that properly. Let's say my wife comes home tomorrow and says, whatever, I got a job, or somebody gives her a job as whatever, the nuclear physics, which would be pretty hard because she doesn't know jack shit about nuclear physics, but hypothetical. So, and she's gonna earn like 150 grand a year, and I'm just trying to like cut the tree branches for my olives, and then I would become the stay-at-home husband with the kids. I would be like, I don't give a shit. I don't think that would play out at all. It would be like when, if I was at home with the kids, I'd play with the kids. I'd teach the kids how to like shoot, hunt, track wild animals, and like stitch up their own cuts when they fall off a tree. And I'm not the kind of guy to like probably cook dinner, but like if she was doing all the work and that, I'd be like, hey, I'll find a cook and I'll manage that cook so that your shit's ready when you come through the door. It wouldn't change our dynamic because of who I am. It doesn't have to do with money. Like I've found that yes, women want the successful guy and whatever, but probably because of who I am, I'm never going to be some loser that works like stacking shelves for 20 years. Even if I end up in a situation where I do have to stack shelves to survive, I'll be doing that for like, I don't know, a year tops, and then I'll become a manager of that fucking Walmart or whatever. And then another year after that, I'll become a manager of 2 Walmarts, or whatever. If you drop me, parachute me into like fucking Siberia with like a knife and some clothes, give it time, a year, 2 years, I'll be doing okay. So it's on you, to become
Let's
something.
let's discuss this issue briefly now, because I can't stay on the call for a great deal longer.
No, that's
But I
fine.
do
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
talk about one aspect of the book that I thought was actually, in some sense, I think the most important part. That is, and you do refer to it a bit, but you don't go into huge, extensive detail. I think you give it enough of a
Hmm.
signpost for people to take really seriously. But it's just the idea of what you call like the inner light within a man. And your biggest observation was that woman really loves a man. That is actually what she falls in love with. It's not any of the even surface level things like shows of confidence are not what she falls in love with.
Yeah,
Because even the show of confidence is actually just a reflection of that if it's really there.
yeah,
Now, then I know you and I had a call in the past where we talked about the difference between being intrinsically motivated and externally motivated, and how this connects to things like morality and stuff. But I think the key takeaway that you would emphasize, right, is if you're a man, you've got to just know who the fuck you are and get two hands on the reins of that. Because obviously that's the second part, right?
yeah,
Know thyself, but then also master thyself, and get a grip of who you really want to be and should be. And
yes,
once you get all of that sorted out, everything else will just follow afterwards. Maybe you
yes,
do find a woman, maybe you know because of who you are and because of your internal truth that you can't be a stay at home husband. Well, then that would just be a filtering mechanism, right? If you find a woman who wants you to be a stay at home husband, you say, well, fucking next.
yeah,
Because you
absolutely.
can't be that. That's not what your life can be because that's not who you are.
Yeah.
But the women you do eventually come across who connects with that, who harmonizes with that inner light, is going to be maybe not the one or a one, but the woman who a woman who can work with you, right?
Well,
But
yeah,
still,
that,
you have to find that and uncover it.
that's a very good point because yes, it's absolutely true. Like women have an the thing that attracts a woman, especially a woman that's a little bit more evolved than average. If you're talking about the solipsistic 20-year-old that's got like vocal fry and like is only interested in whatever, yeah, forget it. I wouldn't be able to use that even if she didn't open her mouth for anything other than sexual stuff. I couldn't stand 30 seconds of that. But my point is that women get attracted to that internal sense of self, which is, the Systema book, I hammer that point home, like know yourself, know yourself, know yourself. And not just know yourself, know you yourself, but know for yourself anything that you have to deal with in life. you know, even the stuff I tell you about, even this book, it's like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that I think is absolutely useful, but then you need to like put it into practice, and you need to know for yourself how to apply it in your life, in your way, the way you are, because it's the same like martial arts, right? I can teach you how to throw a punch, but like I'm 6'2" and 95 kilos. You're like 60 kilos wet. The punch you throw is going to be a different punch from the punch I throw. And it needs to work for you. You need to make it work for you when you're punching a guy that's bigger than you, a guy that's smaller than you, you know. So everything in life, you need to make it applicable to yourself, by yourself, with your own method of measurement. So yes, now if you have that intrinsic, very deep self-knowledge, women get attracted to that. Like they don't even know why, but it's like they might even hate you. They might think you're a bastard, but they'll still end up in bed with you and want to kind of be there. Uh, I've had situations like that where it's just like, I mean, I've been with women that we literally could not communicate at all because I didn't speak their language, I didn't speak mine beyond literally hello, which we had to look up in a fucking dictionary. And they spent like weeks at my place, and that's like, you know, people would ask me like, "How do you communicate?" It's like, yeah, non-verbally, because they can sense that. Like women have got an incredibly powerful radar for that stuff because it's a survival radar. You know, like
I was going to say, yeah, because if you tie it back to caveman theory, what does a
yeah,
woman need? She doesn't need her mind to be calibrated to objective reality, but she needs to find a man whose mind is
yeah.
right,
And the
and
point is, a man
so
that
that's what all of her internal senses will be picking up on.
a man that is absolutely, you know, who knows himself absolutely deeply, that guy, he knows how to deal with the universe. Because that's the only way you figure out who you really are. You know, when you've gone through hell and back and forwards and upwards, and you really know who you are, it's not fake. You can't fake it. You know, it's not like the blusterful American that goes, I know everything there is to know about football or baseball or whatever. Like I saw a video that was incredible. I forget what the guy's name is, but anyway, he's a YouTuber who like talks about guns, and he says like, I don't know a single world-class shooter I've dealt. You know, this guy's got a big channel and there's a lot of people on it. Because I don't know a single guy that will do 100% of his shots at 600 meters. And when he said that, I thought, I would want to have 2 months of like as much ammo as I can use to like blow it away. But I think with my rifle, I'd stand a chance of doing that. That's what I thought, like when I watched this. And he goes on to say, like, there's one guy, everybody was like, yeah, I can do it, a whole bunch of people. And then I said, like, right, I'm going to fucking fly you out here. We're going to film you, put your name on it, and see if you're talking shit. And he says, everybody dropped out except this one guy who, like, was a Marine and blah, blah, blah. So he gets this Marine there, and and he's talking such a fucking good guy. Yeah, I've been a Marine. Yeah, I know how to shoot. Yeah, I know I got my rifle. I brought my rifle. It's a 300, blah, blah, blah. And you sort of think, okay, seems to know what he's talking about. But like, I knew where this was going just from looking at the guy, you know? He's like overweight and he's kind of like, I was just like, yeah, I think this is your typical American. So first shot, right? This is like not part of the test. So the guy puts 100 like jugs at different ranges, which I thought, already that's fucked up because you said 600-meter shots. So they should all be at 600 meters at random different places. He put some of these things at like not even 200 meters. I'm like, if you can't do a 200-meter shot with like a proper rifle with who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? I can do a 200-meter shot with open sights, I think. And anyway, the first shot, he fucking cuts himself with the scope. It's like, that's like, I don't know, super newbie, idiot. Oh no, because I slipped. And okay, fair enough. Second shot, he misses. So he's already fucked up the whole thing. Anyway, they don't even go to 600 shots. They go to, I think, 100 or something. And he like does like 30 of them. Like, this guy wasn't even in the ballpark. But the way he talked about it was like, yeah, you know, I know. It's all bluster, all bullshit, complete fucking nonsense. And he's so like, there's so many people like that today that like talk such a utter bullshit and they haven't got a clue. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. And the thing is, this applies across the board and stuff. So, but the thing is, a woman can sense this shit. You can't fake that stuff. It's like saying when you have that level of self knowledge, and a woman that's, especially a woman that's a little bit, not retarded, she will sense the stuff a mile away, and she will know intrinsically this guy's talking shit. So it's the equivalent of being the guy who can do 100 shots out of 100, and being the fat idiot that says he can and he can only do like 20 or whatever. That's how a woman responds. The woman will
Yeah,
respond to the guy who do 100 out of 100. She'll respond to him regardless of whether he's got money or not money, because that's the guy that
and
can
let's
do
be
100 out of
clear.
100.
And it's not like a woman only responds to the fucking supermen who can do a million things perfectly, right?
No.
Maybe you realize that you're just a kind of run of the mill guy who, you got one good thing you can do in your life is fucking build houses or something, right? Or fix cars. But that's you. That's the difference,
Yeah.
right? The difference between knowing that and not knowing that. And you think, no, do you know what? That's my fucking. I've in my life, I'm gonna put all my chips down and be a fucking good car mechanic.
Yeah.
I am that. That's what I want. I want to live in some small little town somewhere with 5 kids, but that's me, and I
Absolutely.
know that.
Absolutely.
And if that light is clear for you, that's the point, right? That's what she actually falls in love with. And
Yeah.
if another
Well.
guy comes along trying to swing his dick around saying, well, I'm going to be a billionaire and I've got 5 Bugattis, but he's actually lying to himself, that will
Yeah.
have a worse smell to it,
I
right?
would say there's another component to it. So it's not enough for you to know yourself and know that you're going to be the mechanic. Now that's one part of it. The other part of it, your sense of how you are with your woman is like you are going to look after her. And that means in pretty much every respect. It means, yes, financially, but emotionally, psychologically, physically. You know, it's not enough to just be a really good mechanic. You also have to be a really good mechanic that if somebody breaks into your house, you're not the guy with a gun, but you're the guy with a spanner because you're a mechanic, and you're going to take that spanner and you're going to fight for your fucking family's life. That
Yeah,
those two elements have to be there. They both have to be
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Wally Ram asks a very interesting question. Practical question. How do you mediate reality to a woman? Say it's essential she understands and accepts a certain fact. How do you rotate the fact so it fits into her movie? When you figure that out with 100% success, Wally, you write a book and I'll buy that book. Because there's no one answer. It depends on the woman. You have to know that woman quite well, and you have to know how to access whatever percentage of actual logic she's capable of doing. You have to slot in there just right with the right lever, because it's not one lever. There's like a whole set of like fucking levers. Sometimes they're screwdrivers that you use for like those watches for Swiss things. Sometimes it's one of those big like metal things you open to break down doors, and you gotta slot in just at the right time in the right way, and then you gotta like just feed in just enough to like make her realize that she's talking out of her ass. And then sometimes you got to step back, because if you don't, then you're going to hit another wall. Yeah, it's not easy. What I'll say to you is, if you understand how to use the female sociosexual hierarchy that I've got in the book, if you understand how to use that properly, I would say that's probably the best tool that you can find on the planet. I don't know if Tony has got a comment on that, or if he agrees or not, but that would be my take.
Well, I'm no expert in this field, but I suppose just from everything I understand, you would try to make it emotionally digestible in some way, you know?
Yes,
And
of
suppose from
course.
what you've said as well, you find some way to actually make it fit in with a solipsism, right? Like I said to you, my friend made a really good observation the other day, which I thought was quite lucid. He said, we were talking about how moral women can be, because obviously they are moral creatures with choice and free will and everything. And
What are you
he
talking
said
about?
men can be.
He's gone off the rails. Huh? He's going off road. I don't know where he's going with it. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Rural internet. I've switched internet, so I know most of you have left, but I'm gonna. Okay, hopefully this will stay up. Tony was like saying something really interesting, so let me see if I can get him back as well. Actually, let me send him a text. Right, I'm going to put him back in. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to say, oh, you might. Oh, he's not there. So, well, apparently he's. Okay, I think he has to restart on his side as well. Anyway, Tony was starting to say something really interesting about something about to do. Aha, here we go. There he is. And add him back to the left. There he is. Sorry about that. My rural internet came into effect.
Well, I thought maybe the whole conversation of women being moral was so confusing that it really did fucking freak YouTube out.
Ripped in the time continuum, I think. When you started to say women are moral and have free agency.
All right. I'm going to just finish my thought on that, and then I might actually have to wrap up after that anyway. But look, the only reason why I even mentioned it was because obviously when you realize all the things that you've been speaking about, you get to this point where you realize that women are more emotionally reactive than men.
Yeah.
They're less rationally consistent, and it seems to mean that they're not quite as morally consistent as men either. But then obviously it's the other binary thinking end to say, well, therefore they're not moral creatures or whatever the fuck. And my friend, like I said, made a really good observation. He said, look, it's like this. We get annoyed at it because men look at like facts and logic and we say, well, God exists and therefore moral law and therefore we need to be virtuous and all that kind of stuff. And he said, look, men can follow morality on the basis of abstract ideas.
Yeah.
But women are more likely to follow morality on the basis of people. That's what leads them to it. We can lead us. It's not even like we lead ourselves there. Our logic leads us there. God leads us there. But for women, it's more like people lead us there.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, which also made it click. Like that's a really cool reason why Christianity is also a personal religion as well.
Yeah.
Like the God we actually worship is actually not only is he God in heaven, but he's actually a person who is human at the same time.
Yeah.
So that men and women alike can actually speak to someone personal, and he's not just an abstract concept. But yeah, so that whole idea of being led by the human element, I think, is something that can help women find truth and find purpose and find
you know
morality.
that, and again, it's you're absolutely that's a very good point. Yes. Sorry, Bruno says I'm 9 out of 10 in looks. Okay, Bruno, I don't know that we can rate ourselves very correctly. I think it's a bit subjective. I don't know what my own fucking number is. I think it varies between, I don't know, maybe 6.5 for some women to like 9 for other women. I don't know. I don't know what my objectively what my number is. I think it's kind of difficult to tell.
I think I usually gauge it by like instead of like 1 to 10, it's more like 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is you're obviously like
a goblin.
Just come out of a sewer. Yeah. 2 is like reasonable, but you're obviously not some kind of Hollister model. And the third one is like, okay, so you're basically designed by Zeus or something. It's like that, but
It's actually you're right. For
yeah.
women, it is kind of like like the Russian saying is like men only need to be a little bit prettier than a monkey. That's kind of how I actually see it. That's kind of true. Yeah. Tides of Truth says my father was 20 years older than my mother. I have a younger brother. Dad carried the line on. Yeah, there you go. And I'm guessing it worked out. Bruno says, thanks for the answer. And yes, I've decided basically that they should have not taken the needle first and Catholic second. The first you can't change. The second, God willing, yes. The second is, I think, easier to change than a lot of people think. If you understand the concepts that I put in this book, because I also get a lot of emails from guys that are like, oh, become Catholic and now my wife doesn't love me anymore, and it's like, dude, what have you done? It's like, well, I kind of said we always have to go to church every week, and she has to do this, and she has to pray the rosary, and the kids have to be raised this way, and it's like, oh, and so you got baptized 2 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden, things are not working out. Well, I wonder how that came about, because it's like, that's not leading. That's kind of like, I've just become a general, and we're going to attack Iran. It's like, wait a fucking minute. You've literally just put the uniform on. You don't even know whether the star's on the shoulders or the fucking collar, and now you're going to attack Iran. Nah, just chill out, dude. And a lot of guys have a Protestant zeitgeist, which is something I talk about in the book as well, because the binary thinking of Protestantism is very responsible for a lot of
well, like I mentioned to you in one of the conversations we had, like I get the impression that, and I know you see it more clearly already because of your experience in IQ, but these are all one topic basically.
Yeah.
I was
Caveman Theory.
I've spoken to you in disparate conversations about topics like binary thinking and relaxing, just being relaxed in life and kind of going with things, but then also being disciplined and then understanding women and relations and stuff more. But then it even ties to like doing work properly and being properly motivated in life. They're all one topic ultimately, but this is just kind of one particular suburb, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, but yes, you're right. It is, and I know you probably have some stuff to do, because I don't know what you get up to in the middle of the night, but I know you have probably students or something. I don't know.
No, like I'm just going to rest, to be honest with you. I did this little trip to Albania as a little island in my travels between Montenegro and Italy. For this week, I thought I'm just going to stay in this middle of buttfuck knocking. Well, it's not buttfuck nowhere; it's the capital, but it feels like it.
Tirana is. Tirana is kind of, yeah.
It is a bit buttfuck. I'll tell you what, though. Second time, because I lived in Albania for 3 months a couple of years back, and second time being here now, get quite a warm vibe from it. I really have noticed how friendly the people are here. The prices are dirt cheap, so I'm living like a king at the moment.
There's also some very pretty women. I used to have an Albanian girlfriend.
There are a lot of attractive women here. That's true. You can see that when I'm walking around.
And some of them are really like quite. I mean, I don't know if this will get me banned because it's geography again. Like my thing on geography and nationalities is only on BitChute now. Video 114. But I think Albanian women are a little bit like German women. If you're used to German men or Albanian men, anything else is an upgrade.
If I was going to use one word to describe Albania, it'd be the word square. Everything is square here. It's got square buildings and square streets and square architecture, and all the people have square faces.
Have you come across from the airport when you drive into Tirana? There's a building. When I last was there, which was a long while ago, it's on my old blog. There's a photo of it. There's a building that literally on the top of the building had this giant letters with like a dot in between, so it was like a fucking acronym that spelled, I swear to God, I'm not making this up, fear. I guess it's the headquarters of fear. It's like that's where all the James Bond villains fucking study or something. It's a hilarious
That does
building.
seem very Albanian, though. The other thing I'll point out is anyone wants to look it up, it's got one of the most aggressive flags in the world.
Oh yeah.
So when you see the Albanian flag, it does make you feel the double-headed like eagle, black and red, black and like Nazi. It's genuinely Nazi red.
Yeah, I know it is.
It's pretty intense. But no, despite all of that, the people here are pretty good. They're a pretty good vibe.
Yeah.
Very affordable. So yeah, I'm kind of resting here, and then I'm moving to Calabria on Tuesday.
On purpose.
So that's the story for now.
Why don't you just go to Algeria? It's about the same.
See, this is the thing now. Like, ever since talking to all of you Italians, and I know you're not Italian, you're Venetian, for
Yes.
fuck's sake, but
Good.
yeah, they've all now created like a myth of southern Italy for me now. So obviously, just being,
Now that
I had to check it out.
the reality is that South Italians are quite warm, and they were quite generous, and they'll feed you and give you a bed to sleep in. Of course, when you leave, they'll have stolen your wallet and your clothes, and your car will be broken if you had one. But it's just one of the just how my people are.
What I love about most Italians I talk to, because a lot of them are, I'm a teacher in various regards. I talk to a lot of very liberal-minded people, and they say, "Oh, Tony, I hope you have a nice time in southern Italy, but just be aware that they're not quite as open-minded as people in the north." And for me, whenever someone says that now, like, "Oh, this group of people are closed-minded," I'm like, "Fucking sweet,
Yeah,
introduce
yeah,
me."
yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
can't wait to.
I'll tell you one thing. Like Venetians, generally speaking, are not well liked in the rest of Italy because we tend to be like pokey, rude bastards that will just like say some random fucked up thing just to see how you react, and then if you get all freaked out
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it, we'll
yeah.
just keep doing it. So it's like my first was like, you fucking Venetians, you're all the same, kind of, like you're all backstabby, like can't trust you people. And I was like, that's not true. You can really trust the Venetian. And the same thing about Sicilians, right? Oh, that's where the mafia comes
Mm.
from, and like, they're all fucking bad. And the thing is, I have yet to meet a Sicilian I don't get on with. And
Well, so even the whole mafia thing was basically based on honor culture, wasn't it?
yeah, it was.
Um, the original conception of the mafia is quite different for whatever it's kind of mutated into now, from
Well,
my limited understanding.
now it's like, the mafia now is, well, I don't know if you know, but like in the 80s, I think, or early 90s, there was a big mafia don that really like, kind of like,
I remember you telling me about this. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
I
yeah,
don't-
I know where you're going with this, but tell it anyway.
yeah, and he gave himself up. Like they didn't have shit on him, and he just walked into a cop station and said, "Nah, I fucking had enough of this," because the mafia's become scum. They're like fucking drugs and kids and women. And it's just bullshit. It used to be an honorable profession, and now it's just become filled with like scumbags. And he fucking gave up like, I don't know, hundreds of people they fucking arrested because of him. So yeah, the original mafia, but it's the same like with like Russian. Again, depends which, right? The old style or the new style, like Russian fucking criminals or whatever, or like. And again, if you're dealing with like fucking human traffickers, they're scum. But you know, I was invited to go to Moscow for a potential project that was going to happen or whatever. And like, the way the Russians do business is like they'll feed you and give you like, take you out to cool places, offer you women for like 3 days in a row, and then they'll have a business meeting that lasts like 3 minutes. So it's a weird way of doing business, but it's kind of cool and whatever. And so like they did all the whining and dining. They offered the women, which I was like, nah, thanks. They were like, why are you gay? We'll give you something. I'm like, no, I'm not gay. I just like the challenge. If you pay for it, it's too easy, whatever. So they're like, oh, okay. And then the business thing came up, and like they proposed this business to me, and I was like, "You fucking kidding me? Do I look like I just walked off the boat or something? What you're saying to me is like you want me to be the fucking fall guy for this, and this is how you're gonna steal the money?" And I just like laid it out for them, like, don't insult my intelligence. And their attitude was not like, "Oh, what do you say?" Their attitude was like, they talk to each other a bit in Russian. And I had like a friend that kind of like afterwards he told me what
This
they were
guy
saying.
is not a stupid pussy. We can
Yeah,
respect that.
it's not
Yeah.
just that. They did that with themselves, and then they like turned to me and go like, "You are a very intelligent man. Okay, this one is not for you, this project. But if we have another project, a real one this time, we can call you." And I said, "Yeah, there's no problem. Just remember though, if you fuck me, I know you guys are big, powerful guys, but anybody can kill anybody. It's easy." And they were like, "No, no, we like you. We don't do that kind of thing with you. It's okay." They never called me again, probably because they didn't have a good business like that wasn't fucking somebody over, and they thought that guy will actually probably stab us in the neck if we do that. So, but the thing about like proper honest criminals, they're far more honest than your average middle manager in like white collar work.
Yeah, and they just naturally respond to respect so easily. I mean, I've got one
Yeah.
really mild example compared to anything you've been through, but when I was last here in Tirana, I was just drinking with a lot of drug dealers in the town centre. And I just went, they've got all these like beer shops just like out on the street. So I just went around, like, hey guys, how you doing? I sat down and I was like, oh, you're English, cool. And they all like invited me over. And they all started showing me their rap music. And so we all got sat down talking. They were telling me about how they've got like cousins in London and all this kind of shit. And, just as we do, I was just having a bit of banter at one point, and some joke came up and, oh, you bastard, like bastardo. And one of them didn't twig that I was joking. They all stood up at once. There was like 8 of them. They all went, bastard? What the fuck do you mean? And it was like all there, ready to go.
Yeah.
And I just kind of no, honestly, it's a misunderstanding. Like, it's just in the UK, we just take the piss out of people. And the moment they saw I was relaxed and didn't mean anything by it, they just kind of went, oh, okay, do you want another beer? And they all just sat down instantly, all 8 of them all at once. And it was like, oh no, if he's being cool, it was fucking chill. So
yeah, because
bastard, that switch.
In those countries, bastard is still a very offensive word. It's like what you're saying, my mother's a whore, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they all took it as an offense, really. But you saw that quick switch where it's like, if we think you're offending us, we will fucking kill you. But if not, it's all cool. Like,
I even when I was a kid, I remember there was this guy that he was like a known street. I mean, this guy used to get into like fights with 4 or 5 people and he'd win. He was like a hardcore dude. And, he was like in his 20s and I was like 15 or 16 or something like that. And I was sitting outside with him. But we were kind of friends because like he was, everybody was fucking scared of him. And I wasn't scared of him. So he would just talk to me like a normal guy. And there was this young couple. They were again, 15, 16, this like Swedish dude. And he was like a pretty boy with like a very pretty girl and like walking past, going to the cinema. And we're just sitting on the wall outside. And he started to like make like rude fucking comments to the guy about a girl or like they're just like a couple of young kids and he's like going on, oh, like, yeah, you don't know how to fuck her, bringing her over, like some really rude shit. And I was sitting next to him and I hit him. Like hit him on his chest, just like bang. Now there was no fucking chance. If this guy decided to beat the shit out of me, he could have literally killed me. Okay, he was like mid-20s and super fit and trained like a motherfucker. He was really a dangerous fucking guy. I mean, he took out people with knives and bottles like regularly, like just for fun, And I slapped him like on his chest, like, boom. What the fuck you doing? Leave him alone. It's just a kid. And he got like so like, boom. He just jumped up, grabbed me by like the shirt, pulled me up and goes, what the fuck, you want to fight with me? I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, what? Like, I know you can kick the shit out of me. That's not the point. Don't be a cunt to that kid. That's, you're just being a cunt for no reason. Fuck you. Sit down. Okay. Just like, it's kind of like, this kid knows I can kill him and he doesn't give a shit. He's just like, and he's kind of right. Yeah, okay, fuck it. I'm being a dick. So yeah, it's like, people like that are, I've never really had a problem with like those kind of honest criminals, like they're
I have
cool.
I met a lot of guys like that when I was a kid. I used to hang out with my cousins in the area. They grew up. And they all have this like instant, really like automatic sense of aggression, which is because of how they're raised in the fucking area they live in.
Yeah.
And genuinely, a lot of times they are just complete dicks because no one's told them not to be.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason. And they go up there, they're like in their 40s by the time anyone tells them to shut the fuck up.
Or they've got a guy that like clocked them properly and like now they're paying attention a bit more.
But then I also noticed amongst those groups, they have this really strong like honor culture, like, well, Johnny's cousin's friend was in a fight, so all of us now have to go and look after Johnny's cousin's friend or whatever. You know, it's like that sense of connection between them and group like support was pretty fucking cool, actually. But
it's very tribal. It's sort of pretty.
Very tribal is the best word.
I don't like the tribal part because for me, I don't know. I come from I have figured it out again. Caveman Theory is deeper. There is something to biology because I found out only a few years ago that like my family line is 800 years of like essentially crusaders. Like the earliest reference I could find to our name is people that were coming back from the Crusades. And they definitely knew how to fight. And because, again, throughout all the history, they're like in ancient history books of our heraldry and whatever in Italian stuff. They're all involved in like fucking major battles and shit. So I think, and I was raised that way as well. And, you know, but there's definitely my family been this code of like, yes, you're loyal to your family, you're loyal to your tribe, but above that is justice. You know, above your tribal differences.
The true warrior code, as you might say.
Yeah, it's like the honorable, correct truth is important. You can't ignore that shit, you know. So if your brother turns out he's a pedophile, well, you know, you have to cut his throat yourself. That's the honorable thing to do. It's like you don't want a stranger to do it because he's your brother, but you know, he's a pedophile, so he has to die, and you know, you'll have to do it. It's like it's that kind of. It's not like, oh, just because he's your buddy. You know, I've had. Even as a kid, even as a young kid, I remember like there was this, I mean, I'm talking, I was like maybe 5 and my brother was like 3 or 4. And there's this kid in Nigeria who was about, again, maybe 5 or 6, something like that. He's about the same size as me. So he might have been a bit older, but you know, he was anyway, African kid. And I don't know, he did something, he like was holding my brother's bicycle or something. He was doing something to like, fuck with my brother, and I went there and I said, what the fuck you doing? Leave my brother alone. And he was like, oh, no, no, you know, he's just carried on. So I fucking went for him. I started like fighting with him, and my brother like joined in, because my brother is like, fuck you, you're fighting with my brother who came to help me. I'm gonna help my brother beat the shit out of you. And while I'm fighting with this kid, I'm telling my brother, no, this is not fair, you know, like fucking let me fight with him. It's like 1-on-1. And my brother just wasn't listening because he was pissed off. This kid had made him cry, whatever. And he was, like I said, 3, right? So it's a stupid little fight. No, it's not a... But anyway, we finished this fight. The kid fucked off. We went back. As we're going back, my dad's been sitting on the stoop watching us, as my Sigma dad would, you know, not like any normal father that would be like, hey, kids, what are you doing? Come there. And as I come up, he looks at me. Again, I'm 5, right? Maybe 5, because I might have been 4. I don't remember. I remember the event. I don't know how old I was. Definitely, I was not older than 6 at the most. Outer limit, I might have been just turned 6, because shortly after that, we were back in Italy. So I was not 6, I'm sure of it. I was about 5 at most. I'm walking back with my brother. You know, we're a bit scratched. No real blood. Maybe some scratches, a bit of bleeding, but nothing serious. And as we woke up, what's the first words out of my father's mouth? Well, I don't know if I have any respect for you anymore, son. Now the 2 of you fighting against 1. Most unfair. Very dishonorable. Gets up and walks off. Like, you know, so and that was like, what the fuck? I was helping my little brother. I was trying to tell my little brother to stay the fuck away. He wouldn't listen to me. And now I'm the cunt. It's like, fuck you, Dad. You know, that was kind of like the feeling I had. But yeah, that's kind of how I was raised. So you can kind of see where certain